Daz Studio enthusiasts. This is Not From This World, and I'm going to welcome you back to my tutorial series. Now today I thought I'd talk a little bit about spotlights because I was messing around and noticed that there are quite a few choices for settings with your spotlights, and I was curious to see what kind of changes they would make. Now, I have my scene with Milika set up with my classic 3 spotlights. So I have a spotlight here to her right, a spotlight to her left, and then a spotlight in the middle. And I get the classic lit up indoor scene that you see here. Now, what we're going to do for this video is test the differences between the spotlights in their tab. So what I'm going to do for this test is I am going to hide spotlight and spotlight number 2. And we're going to focus on this spotlight number 3. By the way, the spotlight number 3 is the one that is straightforward. So if you go to the spotlight and click on it, we probably know that under the spotlight you have some choices. You have some tabs, general, display, and light. And we're going to talk about general and display in a different video, but I wanted to focus on this tab that says light because we have a shadow choice, and then we have area and photometrics. Now, I was told, I don't know, a long time ago when I first started Daz Studio that you should choose under light geometry the rectangle. And so I don't know why, but I've always just used rectangle and haven't really worked with any of the other choices. And so I thought it would be fun to run some tests and just render the same picture with all 5 of these to see if we can find any differences. So what I did is I just ran the same picture as a test and ran each one with the different choice of light geometry just to see if there was any real difference. Now the first picture here is of the point light, and you'll notice that with the point light we get a more sharper image with sharp shadows and some medium luminosity. With the rectangle, which is what I normally use, we see a more blended, faded shadow, but the lighting is about the same as the point. You'll also notice that the rectangle of the spotlight is a dead spot in the image, and that's because the spotlight itself is in the image. The point doesn't have that because the point light is coming from a single point, and that single point is sort of invisible, so small within the image. The next one is the disc, and I don't really see much of a difference between the disc and the rectangle. Then we have the sphere. Again, I don't see a whole lot of difference. And then the 5th one here is the cylinder. And the lighting all seems to be the same. I thought when I started this experiment that the sphere and the cylinder, perhaps even the disc, would illuminate more of the room, kind of like what a ghost light does with the sphere, where it's illuminating in 360 degrees. But as a spotlight, it's not doing that. It says it's a sphere, but it's not really acting as a sphere. So I find that kind of interesting. Now, I did the same test up close with Milika and her face, and as you can see, as we kind of scroll through the results, there really isn't much difference with the exception of the point light having a more sharper shadow. There are some variations in the shadow. There's a slight variation in a couple of them where the lighting might be a little bit brighter or a little dimmer, but we really just don't see much of a difference. So my conclusion with this is your light geometry, it doesn't really matter which one you select. You're going to get pretty much the same result. Now I also did this, it says 2-sided, and I honestly have never even tried this, but I went ahead and turned it on, and then I did a render. So here is the first render with this off with the rectangle. And then the second render here is with the two-sided on with the rectangle. And I am not seeing much of a difference with that as well. So not much of a difference. With the render emitter on and off, I also don't really see much of a difference. So you can play with that. I do want to go a little bit into the photometrics, just because photometrics is what I use the most when I'm making a spotlight. The luminous flux, of course, is the brightness. Lumens are how bright things are. So the default, let's just look if I reset this value. The default is only at 1500. And I had this cranked up all the way to 50,000 for my render. So you can make your scene brighter or darker, really using this luminous flux. The bigger number, of course, the brighter it's going to be. What I find interesting is the temperature here. The temperature is fun to play with because you can make sunset or a sunrise type of scene, make it kind of yellowish or orange using the temperature, or you can make it like a midday outside sunny kind of picture, or you can do, you know, something like twilight or darkness by changing this temperature. Now what's really cool is Daz has arranged this in Kelvin, just like real temperatures. So if you were to, like, for example, look at distant stars, if the star is red, it's cooler. If the star is blue, it's hotter. And so that's what this little chart is showing us. So if we set Daz Studio Spotlight down to something like 3,000 to 2,500 to 2,000 down to 1,000, you're going to get yellows increasing to red. It's defaulted to 6,500, which is right here at daylight. And then if we go higher, we will get more blue color, kind of to a darker blue here at 10,000. So I also ran this test, and I actually use this all the time. This is where we actually get some good results. So with the spotlight down at 2,000, here is the same picture using the rectangle. And then here is 10,000. So you can see we get this huge contrast with temperature. I love the temperature. It's really cool. I use it a lot. So this is a cool way to change the mood of your scene. So when we're looking at the choices you have with spotlights, under the area, it just doesn't seem to make a whole lot of difference, with the exception of this point choice in the light geometry. That's going to sharpen shadows. If you want a more faded shadow, you can choose any of the other four. I really thought there was going to be some difference, but I just didn't see any. And then, of course, with our photometrics, make your image brighter or dimmer with the luminous flux. And then you can change the color of your scene using the temperature. So I hope this was informative for you. I'm just kind of playing around with Daz, trying to get different settings. To my surprise, not a whole lot of differences. So one of these more advantageous than others, and let me know in the comments. Don't forget to slam that bell for notifications, like, subscribe, and until next time, happy rendering.